Hello, my name is Daniel, and in this tutorial I want to show you how we create some smoke for our car animation we have created in the car control rig tutorial series part 2. And here we have the animation again, and I simply want to add some Niagara smoke to this animation. And I will also put the whole smoke setup into the project, and you can get the project on CG Trader with the whole car control rig and now also with the smoke added. And first we want to make sure the plugins are enabled, so we simply search for Niagara here and we make sure Niagara effect systems is enabled. The Niagara flutes are enabled because we want to create smoke, and for that we need the Niagara flutes. And later we want to cache the sim in the sequencer, so we also enable Niagara sim caching here. And we are in Unreal Engine 5.3.2. Okay, wonderful. And if we have everything enabled, we can simply duplicate our animation sequence here, and then I simply call it underscore with underscore smoke, and I save the whole thing again. Then I create a new folder in our content and we call this folder to VFX, and then here inside this folder I create a new empty Niagara system, and I call this Niagara system to ns underscore drift underscore smoke, and we save the whole thing again. Wonderful. And then I have added some simulation skeletal meshes to our project here. The first simulation mesh is this one here, which is the rubber of the tires, and we can attach it later to our control rig animation. And then we have the other simulation mesh here, which is this one here. And if we want to create some drift smoke, if we want to create some realistic drift smoke, we want to work with this simulation mesh here, because the smoke is only created on the contact surface of on the contact area of the tire to the road. So not the whole tire creates smoke, only the contact surface to the road creates smoke. And for that we have this simulation mesh here. And of course later in the Niagara system we can simply switch our simulation meshes, and we can decide or we can art direct our simulation, and we can decide which simulation mesh we want to use for the simulation. But in this case I want to use my more realistic simulation mesh here, and I simply attach the simulation mesh to my car inside a sequencer here. And I have to mention it's better to work with skeletal meshes here than with static meshes, because you can put the skeletal meshes easier into a Niagara system than a static mesh. And let's open up one of the simulation meshes, and you can see I have used the backbone of my car rig, and I simply bind the whole meshes to the backbone, and then I attach this one to the car now. And we simply open up the sequence here, and let's move the camera to the car. Then I simply want to drag and drop the simulation mesh into the sequencer, and then I want to create a new attach track here, and I choose the Porsche Turbo control rig, and here I want to choose the tire back left. And then I have to move the mesh a little bit so it sits directly underneath the tires. Okay, nice. I think that's fine. And now the whole mesh should follow the tires of the car. Very nice. And we can start with our Niagara smoke simulation here, and we simply jump into our VFX folder here, double click the Niagara system, and here I want to create a new emitter, and I want to create a new empty emitter here. I simply stop the emitter from playing, and then I want to create for the particle spawn, I want to create a new mesh reproduction sprite, an initialize mesh reproduction sprite, and for the particle update I want to create the update mesh reproduction sprite. Very nice. And then for the emitter update I need the spawn rate module here, and I can simply put in maybe 5000 particles for the spawn rate, and then we simply choose our sim mesh here for the initialize mesh reproduction sprite, and our sim mesh is the tire Porsche sim mesh 2 here in this case, and then we need to choose it also for the update mesh reproduction sprite, tire Porsche sim mesh 2, and we want to change the particle simulation to GPU compute sim. Then we have this little warning here, and we simply choose fixed, and now the warning is gone. And we can simply play the animation, and as you can see now we have some particles spawned to our simulation mesh. Very nice. And now I want to create the fluid emitter, so I create a new emitter, parent emitter, in this case, grid 3D gas master emitter. So I simply choose that one. This could take a second, and then it will appear. Wonderful. And here in the grid 3D gas emitter, we simply change the source to particle source, and I want to disable the sphere source. So if I play the animation, you see we have this sphere here which emits the smoke, and I want to disable this one here. And then I want to put in my emitter so we can spawn the smoke from the particles. So I simply choose emitter, and then here in the emitter's name tab in the particle reader we have to choose the empty emitter here. So I simply search for empty and put this one in. Of course you can rename this emitter with selecting it and then pressing F2, and you can give it your own specific name, but in this case I just leave it called empty. And then we have the emitter assigned to the gas master emitter, the particle emitter to the gas master emitter, but nothing happens. And that's because we need to set the fluid source for the particle update. So we simply search for set fluid source attributes. And now if we play the whole thing, we have some nice smoke coming out of the particles. Very nice. And for the set fluid source attributes, we can simply disable temperature because we don't have any fire simulation here for the drift sim. So we simply put in 0 for temperature, and we can change the radius maybe to 30 for now. And I think that's it. Let's put the playhead to the default position, and then in the emitter summary we want to change the draw bounds a little bit. So we can simply put in, or we can save the Niagara system first, and then we put it into our scene. As you can see now we have this draw bounds here, the red cage, and we want to put the smoke sim here in the center of our scene. So we simply change the draw bounds in the X direction maybe to 3000, then in the right direction to maybe 2000, and for the C direction, which is the height, maybe to 400. Okay, very nice. And now we can add the simulation to the sim mesh, because as you can see now the smoke appears here, but I want to have it on my sim mesh, so I have to connect the Niagara system with my sim mesh. So I simply put it underneath and choose none, and now the whole smoke simulation appears here directly onto my sim mesh. And if I play the animation, the whole Niagara system moves with the car, and I don't want to have it moving with the car. So I can simply select the Niagara system and choose world location for the transform here, and also for the rotation. And then I simply place my Niagara system to its desired position here in the scene. Maybe something like that. Okay, very nice. And let's play the animation again. As you can see here, the smoke collides with our car. And maybe you want to have it colliding with the car, but for me, for my taste, I don't want to have the smoke colliding with anything in my scene. So I can simply jump into the collisions tab and uncheck everything. But you can also create your own tag, so you can specifically say which actor should collide with the smoke and which should not collide. So I simply create this new actor tag here, and I simply rename this to collider. So I can specifically say with which actor the smoke should collide and with which it shouldn't collide. And as you can see now, the smoke doesn't collide with the car anymore, which is very nice. And if I create maybe a cube here and then search for tag and create this new collider tag here for the cube, you will see the cube now collides with the smoke here. So we can specifically say which actor should collide with the smoke and which shouldn't collide. And for this simulation, we only need a collision with the road. So let's take a look to the system again. And I think it's rotated here a little bit. So let's put in 0 for that and then 90 for that one. Very nice. Okay, and then we have one thing we have to take care about is the particle rendering here. So I simply disable the sprite renderer in my particle system emitter here. So now the particles won't render anymore. I don't want to see the sim mesh anymore, and I simply enable actor hidden in game, and maybe we have to change visible to we have to uncheck visible, so the actor is hidden in the game and we only see the smoke here. Very nice. And now we can change some smoke settings here, and I want to show you the main settings you have to deal with if you want to set up your smoke. In this case, it's the density here, how much smoke we want to emit. Then the velocity scale we can set to 0.5. And then the radius, we leave it to 30. And then we have in the emitter simulation tab the resolution. So you can increase the resolution. Be careful with the resolution. So if you have a graphics card with only 8 gigabytes of ReRAM, you don't want to increase it too much, so not more than maybe 600 or 700. Then we have the pressure solve iteration. This helps us to get the smoke more realistic. So you can put in maybe 12. And then we have the density buoyancy. So this parameter is for moving the smoke up or for pushing the smoke into the ground. So if I put in -5 and we play the whole simulation again, you will see the smoke goes up into the air. And if I put in maybe 5, the smoke is pushed into the ground. So maybe we put in -1 for that one. And then we have the dissipation rate for the density here. Dissipation rate density. And if we increase it, the smoke disappears faster. So maybe we put in 1.4 for that one here. And we can change the density. So if you want to have some very slight smoke, you can put in maybe 0.1. So if very slight smoke here, and then you have maybe to change the density dissipation rate. But in this case, I want to have some very rich and volumetric smoke here for the drift sim. So I simply put in 1 or 1.3 in this case. And let's play the whole animation again. As you can see, now we have some nice drift smoke. Very nice. And of course, you can play around with these parameters and create your own simulation. But for me now, that's the basic setup. And I think that's it. Let's cache the whole simulation here. So we can simply drag and drop this Niagara system here into our sequencer. And then we create some new Niagara component. And for the Niagara component, we create a Niagara system life cycle track and a Niagara cache track. And we have this little warning here, so we have to change it to desired age, the system life cycle track. And that's it. And then we can hit this red button and cache the whole simulation. So first I want to save the sequence, and then I simply cache the whole simulation out. Very nice. And of course, if you cache the simulation, you can increase the resolution more, and you can increase the pressure solve iterations, of course, to get some more realistic look, even if the whole editor is very laggy and very slow. But of course, if you cache it, it's very smooth and very nice to handle here. And you can stop at a specific frame and take a closer look to the smoke. Maybe you switch into lids mode, take a look. Very nice, very wonderful. Let's save the whole package here. So this could take a while because it saves the whole cache into your sequence file. And after the save is finished, we want to take a closer look to the lights, because we can change the lights a little bit to make the smoke look better. Okay, saving is now finished, and let's take a closer look to the lights. So we have this rectangular lights here in our scene, and we can change the rectangular light shadow type to cast volumetric shadows. So we have some shadows in our volumetric smoke here, which is very nice. And you can also play around with the volumetric scattering intensity here for the lights. So if you put it to maybe 5, it gets brighter, and if you put it maybe to 0.1, it gets darker. So you can play around with that. And of course you have, if you want to make it very realistic and very nice, you have to maybe add some new lights and place the lights on specific points. And of course you need to change the intensity for the lights and maybe play around with the lights color to make it look more realistic. And then you can render the whole thing out with Lumen. If you decide to render the whole thing out with Path Tracer, you have to enable hardware ray tracing in your project. And if you render it out with Path Tracer, so if I choose Path Tracer here, you won't see the volumetric smoke. So you have to put in the console variable, simply search for heterogeneous volumes here, and then we scroll down, and here we have R point, path tracing point, heterogeneous volumes, and we set this one to 1. And now our path tracer should render the smoke, as you can see here. And of course you have to put in this console variable into your render settings. If you choose your render settings, here you have settings, console variables, and then you add this variable, here, this variable we have put into our command here, and you simply set it to 1. And then if you render with Path Tracer, the whole thing should render out correctly. Okay, very nice. And of course, one thing I have to mention, you can simply switch the simulation mesh here, because we have this other simulation mesh here, the tire Porsche Sim Mesh. So the whole rubber for the wheels. And then you have to change it here. You simply put it into your scene, and then you simply assign the actor to the sim mesh actor here. And of course you have to recache your simulation, and maybe you have to set the fluid source attribute radius to a lower value, and it's up to you to play around with that. I think it's a wrap for this tutorial, and yeah, thanks for watching this tutorial. See you soon, and goodbye.